Hello and welcome to the Transformation Project, a podcast and community for women who are looking to transform into the best version of themselves no matter where they are at. A place where you can listen, learn, and laugh along with us as we dive deep into different topics to help you live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life. Remember, we are all learning here together, and therefore the content and opinions of the hosts and our guests should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Transformation Project. Today is a very exciting day for me because I have someone on with us today who I have been very jealous of. Something about their character, more than one thing of their character, but something in particular of their character. And I don't like being jealous of people, but today we are going to be talking to my sister, Ashton Gainsford. Ashton is a marine scientist. She was born in South Africa, grew up in Australia, and now lives on the South Island in New Zealand. She is an avid adventurer and somebody who never waits for anyone to do what she wants to do as far as her adventuring is concerned. And so she has literally gone all around the world. And on many of those occasions has been completely alone in doing that, which is something that courage is something that I'm very jealous of. It's not anything that I would do, but I'm excited to talk to her because we love the thought of not waiting for anyone to do what you want to do. And so Ashton is here today to talk to us about, as a woman, adventuring and stepping out into that on your own. So welcome on today, Ashton.
Hi, how's it going?
This is so exciting. I love having you on here.
I'm pretty jealous of this trait you have too.
So I am not the adventurer of the family at all. I like my creature comfort. Ashton, you didn't necessarily go to Antarctica alone, but you've traveled in many different places of the world. And that started off really as a teenager, pretty much. You were still 18. We sent you off to Townsville to study marine biology at James Cook University. And then very early on in that, and I feel like you wouldn't even been in your 20s, you headed off to Borneo to go and do some bat research. Again, like with a group, but in that case, you just were like, I want to go to Borneo, and off you went to Borneo. Like, you didn't necessarily have mates with you. But what do you think it is about you that has just grown that adventurous spirit? And tell us a little bit about your background in this area.
I guess I've never really thought about it like that. I haven't thought that what I've done has been interesting or exceptional in any way. I think, if anything, I've just been impatient, and when opportunities come up, I often jump at them, and have been really lucky that most of the time things have worked out really well, and I've ended up with some great experiences and stories and new friends. I certainly wasn't always the most adventurous one in the family. As you know, our brother is a little bit more of a risk taker, but I think I really enjoyed traveling on my own, which has led to doing things like hiking alone, after a few years, just the freedom of it and the opportunities that come when you just throw yourself into something and sort of run with it.
So when you say hiking alone, so we've recently, was it this last New Year that you were on your own? Well, you ended up not being alone on New Year, but you were hiking around an island for a couple of days by yourself and ended up in some cabin somewhere for New Year's.
Yeah, that was not this last New Year's, but the New Year's before. I guess after 2020, like most people, I was feeling pretty restless and was trying to come up with things to do in my holidays to make the most of it. And to be quite honest, I couldn't find anyone to do anything with. My plans didn't really align with any of my friends. I was stuck in New Zealand, not that that was a bad thing, but stuck here and really wanting to go on a bit of an adventure. So I thought, well, Stewart Island looks pretty interesting. And there's this track that runs down the south coast, and it's quite isolated. So I was hoping really to not see many people. I wanted to spend some time in nature and avoid the crowds. But what I ended up doing was walking straight into a campsite, to a hut that was jam-packed with people for New Year's. There were little planes that landed on that beach and dropped off even more people. And I think the hut took 24 people. And there was still like multiple tents outside. It was full. And in the morning, more people arrived. And my plan had been there to stay for like maybe 2 days. But I woke up in the morning and I just decided, you know what, this is not what I came for. I'm going to pack up. So at noon, I walked out of that site and headed south, which is a pretty challenging 8-hour walk. But I don't know, like in Australia, it's quite funny. There's lots of signs for everything, and they often don't mean much. I feel like Aussies get injured when they go overseas because there's no sign to tell them that there's a hole in front of them. So I was sort of assuming the times that DOC, which is the Department of Conservation, the times that they give were a bit stretched. And so I didn't think it was going to take me that long, but my ego was put in check pretty fast. And I found myself walking into the next hut around 9 o'clock at night in the dark. And the second I got there, I was greeted by a voice saying that the hut was full. And he was laughing, and it definitely wasn't. There were some really great people inside, and that was New Year's Eve. And I ended up spending New Year's Eve with this random bunch of people, maybe 4 other people, on the southernmost hut in New Zealand. And it was exactly what I had come to that island for, to Rakiora. And that was awesome. And for me, being there alone and being able to say, you know what, this isn't what I signed up for. I actually want to keep moving. I didn't need to ask anyone's permission for that. I didn't need to negotiate. I knew that I wanted to move on. And so I did. And it was a great decision.
I just love this. I love in a situation where it's so unknown, you are so certain. But then I guess, wanted to talk about the safety around it. Safety as a woman walking alone.
I guess that's probably a question that comes to mind quite often for people. I do get asked that sometimes when I'm walking. If I come across a family or usually older men, I get asked, wow, you're so amazing that you're walking alone. Are you not scared, that you're a woman by yourself? And I appreciate, I guess, people's probably really sincere feelings about, keeping each other safe. But at the same time, I don't feel unsafe as a woman, especially in nature. If anything, it's much more dangerous to be in your own home sometimes, or closer to many other people as a woman, than it is to be on your own. I feel like women are very capable and resilient, often juggling a million things at the same time. And if you have the opportunity to go and do something, it might be difficult, like going on a solo hike. Things might not turn out great every time. But once you've overcome it, once you've come out the other side and you have finished and you look back at what you did, it opens a door that just makes you feel like maybe the next thing's possible. I have never experienced any sort of untoward or unsafe behavior or comments or anything from anyone while I've been hiking. I certainly have traveling alone, but that's always been in major cities, probably some of the most populous cities in the world, and in broad daylight, in huge groups of people. I was mugged once at night walking to find dinner in Malaysia, and I was walking with 6 or 7 other people. Half of them were men. That's dangerous. That ended up in that situation. I've never experienced anything like that hiking.
So obviously, when as you started younger, you kind of went in different things in groups, and then you kind of seem to have gotten, from my perception, more and more adventurous as you've gotten older and more confident in that. But if someone was a newbie, if there's somebody who's listening and they're thinking, I would really love to be able to go on a hike on my own, or travel on my own, or whatever it is, where would you suggest that somebody starts if they're keen to start and are sick of waiting for people to come with them?
I would say stop waiting and just do it. I know that sounds really straightforward because it's not as easy. I'm a single person. I don't have a family to contend with, but small steps. I certainly didn't start walking, 7-day-long solo trips the first time I went hiking, but going off on smaller day walks is really empowering, and you'll experience a lot of the same things that you will on multi-day trips, starting out with, maybe circuits, so that by the time you finish that track, you're going to end up at the same place, or walking towards something like a swimming hole or a waterfall or a summit or something that's interesting or beautiful, that when you get there, you can turn around and come straight back and you know the way back. Or maybe even you don't get all the way there, but you have the option then to turn around and come back. And it's something maybe you can aim for to try again. It's not always going to work out. There's a million different things that add to the experiences, but can also make it all into an absolute shambles. So everything that makes hiking amazing and invigorating and fun and a great experience is also the exact same things that can make it an absolute nightmare.
On that particular topic, there have been a number of occasions where, we'll hear from you from some foreign country or some island or whatever. And, there'll be this story, like we have a number of Ashton stories that have come out of your various travels. Can you tell us a little bit about whether your hikes always work out as you planned, and kind of what you've learned around that, perhaps?
So they don't always go to plan, and you can pretty much bet on it that there'll be something that doesn't go exactly to plan. So you sort of have to be open to that and know that, especially if you're alone, that you need to be prepared to sort of deal with the situation, pull your socks up, and either make a decision to turn around or that you need to keep going. I guess that there's probably quite a funny story that comes to mind. I had an opportunity to be in South America a few years ago. And because I was there, there's a really famous walk in Patagonia called the O. It's about 93 kilometers. And I only just realized, because I looked it up a couple of days ago, that it's usually something that takes 8 to 10 days. I was there in the summer, and because it's like high season, super packed, I was convinced by the operators that I needed to book the campsites through, because you need to stay at campsites in that national park. Convinced that I could do it in 6 days. I don't remember that part of the story, but it has something to do with why it was quite an interesting trip. And there were a few things that happened before the day I needed to be on the track, including that I had no way to actually get to the start of the track. So I ended up hitchhiking with various groups. And the last car that I got into was actually a bus for people, I guess, that had bought tickets for that bus. I didn't have any cash on me and I didn't have a ticket. And I convinced this bus driver to let me sit in his footwell and drive me to the start of this track. And so I got off the bus feeling pretty chuffed with myself. I remember taking a selfie with the Torres del Paine towers behind me. And I looked pretty smug in it, but it wasn't probably maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes after that. I was walking along and I fell flat on my face. I had 6 days worth of camping stuff and food and whatever in my bag. So it was quite heavy. So I rolled and I turtled on the ground for a while, finally rolled over and I sat up I'd cut up my face. And I sat there and I thought to myself, am I really at my depth right now? This is potentially the time that I need to decide if I'm going to do this or not, because there's been a lot of things leading up to this that haven't lined up. And I sat there, I ate half a block of cheese for lunch at about 9 o'clock in the morning and thought about it. And I decided to get up and keep walking. And the rest of the trip was amazing. I met lots of interesting people. I walked much further than I'd ever walked before. I think that may have been my first solo multi-day trip. But on the 4th day, I accidentally walked into a blizzard. And I know this sounds stupid, but at the time, like if you imagine, I grew up in Brisbane, then I went to Townsville in North Queensland, and I didn't really know about blizzards. It was also summer. It was summer there, so I was under the impression it was going to be warm. And I walked in the morning out of this campground. The ground was frozen, like freezing under my feet. I could see the water in the creeks freezing. And I turned a corner and I remember seeing snow coming down. And I thought it was amazing. I was taking photos and so happy. I kept on walking, and that's when I walked straight into this blizzard. And basically, I realized not long after that, because I couldn't see very far in front of me, I could just see the next sort of pole on this pass, that I just had to keep walking. At that point, my options weren't really to stop because I was so cold, and to turn around was also not a good idea because I didn't actually have a very good grasp on exactly where I was. So things started to get pretty serious quite quickly. So I kept walking, and I remember it being one of the most difficult things that I had experienced before. And finally, eventually made it to the top of this pass. Snow, up to my knees, freezing. And I felt pretty victorious standing on the top of this pass. And just as I stood there, some guy, like I kid you not, ran past me in shorts with a little backpack on. And I was just like, what? Where did you come from? What's going on? I've just been through this really intense experience in my own little world. And this guy had come from a place nearby. I think he was one of the rangers. And he ran up there and he asked me if I was okay, to tell me that they were just about to close the pass because it was potentially too dangerous for tourists like me. And it put a lot of things into perspective, because probably that day, and now going back with the experience I have, now, I probably would have had a much more enjoyable time, made better decisions, and probably not felt like that was one of the most dangerous things I've ever done. But because of my level of experience at the time, it probably was. And I learned so much that day and on that whole trip. And by the time I finished it, I could barely walk. But looking back, it was one of those sort of like aha moments where it opened this door for me to so many more experiences. I was like, oh, I can solo hike. I'm going to do it a lot better next time. I'm going to maybe not take so much of something or make different decisions, but it was really like a turning point for me.
I love this. And I love that you just said you learned so much. I feel like you learned so much about yourself, not just hiking, like you as a person. I don't know why it took me so long to think about this, but my mom has been talking about forever doing the Camino trail. I don't know if you've ever done that or not. And she wanted to do it for her 40th. She wanted to do it for her 50th. And now she's getting close to 60. And she's like, when am I going to do this trail? Nobody wants to come with me. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, I think she's decided she's going to do it in a couple of years for her 60th birthday. So this will be the first time she's ever done a solo hike before. Now, I don't think she's going to do the whole thing. But I guess if that's something that you want to do, and this is kind of her first time, she is getting older, obviously, like, do you have any tips, I guess, for, like kind of what you were just saying, like, should she book accommodation and buses and stuff like that? Or, Is there stuff she shouldn't take and should take? Or just, I guess, from your experience, I don't know if you've done the Camino or not, but.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so stoked for your mum. Yeah, the Camino runs sort of from the southern part of France near the Pyrenees. It runs along the northern part of Portugal, and it's, yeah, pretty amazing pilgrimage. I would say for someone that maybe hasn't done something like that, they definitely need to book, have a hard deadline, have something, spend some money so that you know that you're going to follow through with it.
Put some skin in the game.
Yeah, you need some skin in the game for sure, so that there's that goal and that deadline. And then probably there needs to be like some level of training, and it's not just training for your body, but also just to feel out the kind of gear that you want and that works for you. So walking, like just walking, is actually a little bit different from walking with a big pack on. And even if you can make it as light as possible and everything in there as light as possible, it still feels very different. So going on, day walks, but carrying the bag that you're going to take on the Camino and filling it with a couple of things would be really helpful. I believe on that particular trip, you can stay in lots of the villages, and that's what's really appealing about it. So I think they're really open and welcoming to people, and there's like special places that they open up just for people walking the Camino. So that's like one of the really amazing things about it. So she wouldn't need to be camping or anything like that. When she's actually out there and doing it, remembering that even though she has like a daily deadline of maybe where she thinks she needs to get to, that there are other options. And it's good to push yourself sometimes, but it's also really nice to take your time and take photos and stop and smell the flowers and talk to the locals, or sit down and have a nap. The amount of times that I've been walking and I've just gone off the track to go have a nap in the bushes, it's really nice. And
I don't know if I could do that, or if I would recommend. I'm thinking, but I'm also from Canada. I'm like, you don't just go in the bushes and take a nap. Like, there's bears, and that sounds scary.
Ashton does.
I admit I can actually sleep anywhere, but
when you need a nap, you need a nap, man.
Yeah, to each their own. But like, plan to have some breaks and enjoy places as well. Although at the end, you'll get to the end and you'll feel like you've accomplished something, those things that you do along the way will also make up the experience. Take your time.
So based on some of the experiences, obviously, that you've had, and, because of all the different things that you do, right? You do climbing and mountain biking and diving and all your hiking. And you've been doing all of those things for a number of years. So if you could go now and talk to starting off fresh-faced Ashton, ready to go on her first adventure, if you could go back and talk to that Ashton, what advice would you give her?
Buy a good pair of shoes. At the start, it's actually quite funny to think about it. At the start, a lot of the hikes I was doing, I was borrowing people's hiking shoes. When I went hiking in Malaysia, I walked up Mount Kinabalu in my boyfriend's boots that I borrowed from him for that trip. And they were at least a few sizes bigger than my feet. So don't be stingy on the shoes. Definitely buy your own pair of walking shoes, because it will also mean that you get out more and enjoy yourself more. Make it easier for yourself. I would say start small. There's so much beauty around us in New Zealand, in Australia, all over. Everybody can find somewhere to go and experience nature and to have a little bit of freedom from your normal life, from making lots of decisions that have to impact all the people around you, to have a little bit of quiet time. Just get out there and go for a walk. Don't tell yourself no before you've even started, and expect things to be challenging. Expect things to maybe not work out the way you had planned, and have a fallback plan and be okay with that. It's pretty common for people that hike or walk into the mountains or, do any sort of expedition, that the success is not getting to that point. getting up the peak or walking to the waterfall or diving a particular reef or whatever. It's making sure that you get home and that you're happy and that you're healthy. So that's successful. It's not trying to achieve that thing or get that photo or whatever your idea is of success for a trip. Remember that you can just turn around, you can just change your plans. And if you're walking by yourself, you don't have to explain that to anybody. You just do it.
I wrote down two things there. Like it's the journey and getting home. It's not the destination. And I also just wrote down, don't say no to yourself before you even begin. I love that. It's like these are life lessons. It's not even just about like going out and hiking. I love that.
That's for a lot of people where it is. They think I could never do that. I could never be that. We recently did an interview with the ladies from Mojo Stoke Productions about their documentary Moms Who Climb. And that was one of the things that really came out, is that so many women have so much trepidation about even taking that step that they just simply never do. They wish they have it on their bucket list, but they just simply never do because they're too scared to. So I love the idea of just kind of like taking it small and in kind of bite-sized chunks, and not going full out whatever and then freaking yourself out and going, okay, I'm never going to do that, I'm a terrible hiker or whatever.
Yeah, some of my friends they put it in a really good way, like having mini adventures. Sometimes we don't have time to go on multi-day trips or even day trips. You just maybe have an hour before work or a lunch break. There can be little mini adventures in your day that add up.
That's awesome. Now, tell me, so do you have any safety equipment or things that you take with you if you are going out by yourself for a couple of days? And I know for us, as your family, sometimes the places where you go, we literally can't, there's no mobile signal like for days. So do you have some like safety equipment that you can talk to people about that they may consider?
Yeah, the basics, whether I'm, walking on a track or going off track or even going on a more remote mountain biking ride or anything like that, I would always have my PLB. So that's a personal locating beacon. I've bought one, but you can actually rent them sometimes from businesses or even councils and local like conservation centres sometimes have them available. And they're very cheap and hopefully something that none of us would ever need to use. But essentially, if you did need it, like if you were walking and broke your ankle or something else happened maybe to someone else in your party, you would be able to press a button that would alert emergency services to where you are. So a PLB, I always take a little first aid kit for small things. In Oz, you need to think about snakes as well and things like that. If I'm going on a trip where I'll still be walking late in the afternoon, I always have a torch, a headlight. In Australia, I know the rain is usually fairly warm, at least in Queensland. I got a pretty rude shock when I got to New Zealand and the rain is very cold and the weather changes all the time. Like you need to have things for all seasons. Walking in summer in Patagonia, I walked into a blizzard. Sometimes these things happen, and if you're alone, you need to be prepared to deal with it. Could be a safety thing. It could just also be a comfort thing.
Something that we've gotten before for our brother, for his hikes, is a little water bottle that kind of, it doesn't matter, even if he's got like the grottiest stream that he comes across, he can refill that water bottle so he doesn't have to carry massive amounts of water. Because I think that's something people don't realize too, is that water weighs large amounts. So especially if you're going on a couple of days, you'd have to carry all your water with you really, unless you know where you can find water.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So usually if I was going on a multi-day trip or even a day trip, I'd be thinking about the different points along there that there might be water available. Sometimes there isn't any water available. So you do actually need to carry as much as you need. Other times you can fill water from running creeks and most of the time that will be fine. You can treat water with little tablets. If I come across water, I'll fill up my bladder and then put the tab in and then it does its thing while I'm walking. So I don't have to stop and wait or anything like that. Or there's filtering mechanisms like the bottle that you're talking about. You can also boil water. Sometimes water is not available. So you do need to think about those sort of things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're lucky enough that you come across a hut that has a water tank. But that's, I think, a perk of living in New Zealand. I don't remember things like that in Oz, at least where I've been.
So if you could just give your top 5 tips, like top of the pops, what would they be?
Just get out there and do it. Pick something, back yourself, have an experience, just get out there and give it a go. If you're just completely starting out fresh, join a group. Find maybe a little club to walk with. There's lots of groups online on different social media platforms. Maybe your friends want to go walking with you. But I'd say that if you're going to do that, or friends or family, I would say walk with different people, experience different paces. And, sometimes it's really hard to be the person at the back that feels like they're going a bit slow. Sometimes it's really hard to be the person at the front feeling like you have to keep slowing down or think about other people or whatever. Most of the time, no one's actually thinking about that, and they're just happy to be with you. But being in those positions can feel really different. So walk with different people and experience hiking in a different way. Definitely always tell someone your plans so that they know, whereabouts you are. And if something does go wrong, they have an idea about how they might be able to help you. And then once you've told them your plans and you come back, make sure you tell them that you came back.
That's an important one that Ashton is not always the best at.
Oops. And yeah, like I said, take your time, remember to have fun, enjoy the journey, and be okay with turning around or changing your plan. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you're out there and you're having fun and you get to tell your mates and your family about it.
Well, I have so enjoyed having you on with us today, Ashton. I really hope that this encourages some people out there to be a little bit more adventurous. You never know. It may encourage me to be a little bit more adventurous.
It is definitely
get out there.
100%.
One of Ashton's dreams is that, one day myself and my brother and her will go on a multi-day hike together, and it's always been something that we've gone, that is just never going to happen. But I feel inspired. You inspire me all the time. So I was so happy to have you on. Whoever you are out there, if you are keen to get out and see the world, don't wait for anybody. Get to it. The world is out there waiting for you. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Transformation Project. Hope wherever you are, you're having an absolutely incredible day. Thank you for listening in to this episode of the Transformation Project. The Transformation Project is not just a podcast, we're also a community. We're a collective of like-minded people all around the world seeking to live their best life and raise each other up. We're looking to support you, set goals, get healthier, connect with yourself and others at a deeper level, and better understand yourself and the world around you. We're always looking to link arms with like-minded people, wanting to create more out of life. You can connect with us via our website, which is www.thetransformationproject.net.au. Email us at support@thetransformationproject.net.au, or simply listen in to one of our podcast episodes, which can be found on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can even watch some of our episodes on our YouTube channel, simply called The Transformation Project. Please like and subscribe to make sure you hear all the incredible shows and guests we have lined up. If you have any feedback or any comment, we would love to hear those, as well as any ideas or guests that you think we should be interviewing in future. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Transformation Project.